do that.
So, hello everyone, and we can see the attendees participant topping in one by one, like 15, 16, 17. So let us take a minute and then we can get started. We still have 1 minute, so let's take 1.5 minutes and then we can formally start our webinar.
So maybe I suggest for any interruption, I recommend I can start as a second speaker. Maybe I need to change my laptop. I don't know what's wrong with this app. Is it okay?
It's okay from our side, Dr. Kasoro.
Yes. So I will change the laptop very quickly. So maybe for my turn, everything would be okay, because now just 2 times jumped. I was jumped from the webinar. Okay.
Okay, sure. So I think I should start reading it. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining us from around the world. My name is Ikra Akram. I am an economist at International Water Management Institute in Pakistan. I am delighted to moderate today's Water, Energy, Food and Environment Nexus policy webinar under CGIAR Policy Innovation Science Program. As we all know, the world's food system faces deep inequalities, fragmented governance, and lack of integrated solution. These challenges span water, energy, food, and environmental systems that are deeply interconnected. Addressing these challenges will require integrated planning, policy, institution, and investments. We are organizing the webinar on monthly basis, and this webinar is in the 9th, and which focuses on water, food, and futures, rethinking agriculture sustainability in Asia Great River Basin. This webinar brings together 2 complementary perspectives on growing pressure on Asia-facing major river basin, particularly Indo-Gangetic Plains and Mekong Basin. As we all know that decades of agriculture intensification combined with climate change and expanding water infrastructure are reshaping foundation of food production system. Groundwater depletion, altered river flows, declining sediment loads, and shifting flood regimes are highly affecting crop productivity, fisheries, and rural livelihood around the Asia. So today's discussion will help us to better understand these interconnected challenges through the lens of WEFI, Water, Energy, Food Nexus, and explore practical, evidence-based pathway to sustain farmer profitability while improving water management and building more resilient food system. We are delighted to have you all with us today in this webinar. So we will have, before I begin, I would like to briefly explain the structure of today's webinar, and the session is we will have 2 expert presentations followed by reflection from our distinguished discussant, and then we will open our floor for interactive question-answer session. As Sharon mentioned it in the chat, that I encourage everyone to please drop your question in the chat box throughout the presentation, and we will try to take as much as possible question during our discussion section. So with that, I will also now like to introduce our speakers and panelists. So our first presenter is Dr. Anthony Urfer. Dr. Anthony Urfer serves as a senior water scientist at International Rice Research Institute, IRI, where he leads IRI water team. He is also a visiting scientist at Cornell University in USA and Wageningen University and Research in Netherlands. His work focuses on cutting-edge interdisciplinary research, dialogue, development initiatives that foster more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient water use in agriculture across low and middle-income countries. Our second presenter is Dr. Kosorovo Moravati from Shingon University, China. And lastly, Dr. Bunyad, who is discussant for this session. With this excellent panel, I am confident we will have a very insightful and productive discussion. So without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Anthan to deliver his presentation. Dr. Anthan, you will have 12 to 15 minutes to complete the presentation, and I will not try to disturb you, but I will jump in when time around about to be over. So, and Dr. Anthan, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ikra. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes.
Can you confirm, Ikra? Okay, great.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks a lot for the nice introduction, and very much looking forward to this discussion that we have today and the overviews. I have quite a few slides. I will skip over a few of them. I thought I have a little bit more time, but that's okay. And I will present now a little bit of work that we've been doing in South Asia over the last years as part of the Nexus Gain and now Policy Program Nexus Initiative, and some also adjacent work that hopefully can bring together some new exciting insights for the audience of how things are changing in South Asia and what we can do for integrating a lot of the insights and evidence that we're suggesting, that we're generating, to suggest and develop more policy solutions that can bring change towards a more second green revolution in South Asia. So to start, South Asia, as one of the heartlands of the green revolution, now is facing second generation problems, and hence the title, The Second Green Revolution, where we are finding large investments in food security and that have played out over the last couple of decades, since the 60s, have really resulted in a lot of improved food supply, and also locked in a lot of subsidies on water and fertilizer that are now starting to have quite increasingly environmental consequences. And a big challenge for the countries in the region is really how to start shifting towards a more green agricultural systems that still can be profitable and supporting rural economies. And two of the main problems that we really see are one of fertilizer overuse that's also polluting river basins, and groundwater depletion. And what I try to bring out in this presentation is that to tackle these, we need to tackle them in a combined, integrated fashion, and also start taking care of a lot more issues around greenhouse gas emissions that are coming from rice systems particularly, but also from other cropping systems. And to do that well, I basically have two main points that will be that we need to take a spatially targeted perspective, leveraging more spatial data, and also we need to combine the evidence generation with a lot of policy dialogues and discussions to really come up with sustainable solutions. So to start with, many of you have probably seen this figure of global groundwater use. And you can see that here in South Asia, it's one of the world's largest groundwater users and depletion hotspots. So it's really a topic of global concern. And we feel that if we can really make progress here, that can also help us to derive a lot of lessons for other places where we maybe not have these type of problems yet, or we are slowly running into them. Also, and this is from a recent publication, if you look at India, for example, it's the third largest greenhouse gas emitter from agricultural systems, and rice crops are the world's largest greenhouse gas contributor from any crop production worldwide. So making progress here really will help shift the needle a little bit. And in South Asia, Indo-Gangetic Plains, it will be one of the, I think, most challenging places to really have policy change and change on the ground. So if we can make progress there, hopefully we can learn and also share a lot of the lessons. One of the background issues that really inform this debate and That's within South Asia, I think a very special thing, but maybe not unique. And we have in the northwest of India, for example, for many decades seen really huge investments in infrastructure and crop production that helped to feed the rest of the country and the region. So Northwest India, for example, in Haryana, Punjab, states of India, a lot of investments in irrigation, electricity, fertilizer, helped to produce really a lot of food that helped feed the rest of the country. At the same time now, the rest of the country is catching up. And so food security in terms of overall production is not so much of an issue anymore. And actually, we are dealing with the challenges of oversupply in many, many ways. However, the current subsidies that are in place are still supporting quite high rates of groundwater pumping that are depleting groundwater tables at alarming rates. And also fertilizer use is often quite high compared to what crop needs actually are. So to go beyond this, we really need to shift to a more balanced approach and harmonized approach for agriculture. One of the big challenges, however, that we have is that we don't really know what farmers are doing in the region. And so we started to invest in this, what we call the landscape crop assessment survey. And a lot of the couple of figures that I will show will be based on results from these surveys, and that we then integrated in crop modeling and other modeling systems, where we really try to understand for fertilizer use, water use, improving yield, increasing sustainability, what are the spatial hotspots, and how we can have more targeted investments and policies. And if you're interested, happy to chat and share more about this type of work. And we are working also with currently quite a few of the state governments to institutionalize this kind of information systems to better understand what current practices are and how that informs our policy and investment decisions. Here's a summary of these tools. Happy to share more about this. And one of the important findings from the analysis that comes out of these deploying these crop assessment surveys is that both, this is from Eastern India, drivers of yield and sustainability differ depending on the states quite a bit. So for example, in Bihar and Eastern UP, we have irrigation and nitrogen still be a key driver of yield outcomes, whereas in other places, it's maybe other fertilizers, varieties that are more important for driving yield variability. So what that means is that we need to be mindful of these, and also policy programs really need to target these. And if we zoom in a little bit, for example, in Bihar on nitrogen use, the type of models that we're using really show that there's a spatial structure to the type of effects these nitrogen management practices have on yield and sustainability outcomes, where, for example, the red spots show areas where increasing nitrogen use can really help boost production, where there's a undersupply, but the blue areas are places where reducing nitrogen can actually help sustainability without reducing yields. And going back to the groundwater management issue, I've been saying already the depletion is taking place of around 0.5 meter per year on average, but in some places it's almost 1 meter per year. And this is becoming really a key priority for governments to address. At the same time, changing such a huge over abstraction is not easy. And I think one thing that we need to think carefully about is understanding how we evaluate impact. Here's a graph of groundwater sustainability or unsustainability curves. And once we start reducing depletion, the question is how much are we slowing down depletion, or how much time it will require for us to get back to sustainable groundwater use. And so this factor of time really is crucial, because currently we have a water gap in Northwest India of around 15 billion cubic meters in the state of Haryana alone. And that will not change overnight. So we really need more long-term perspective on this. And just like I said about the yield drivers, also the water resource drivers, they're spatially quite varying. For example, here you see in Northwest India, you have a lot of depletion. In Eastern India, you don't have so much groundwater depletion, so you have actually much more potential to perhaps use more groundwater. But even if you zoom into one area, in Punjab, Haryana, there are places where waterlogging is much more of an issue, and nearby you have really rapid groundwater depletion. So any solutions need to be really tailored and contextually targeted. I will skip this slide, but again, this is the point that we need a longer term structural change, that we really start to monitor and generate evidence for how are we getting ahead. And once we understand the spatial structure, we can start using policy dialogues and more integrated assessments to understand what are possible solutions. Oftentimes, for example, in agriculture, people will say diversification is really important, but what kind of diversification? And so, for example, in the state of Haryana and the northern parts, the current analytics that we've done and policy dialogues really suggest that we need to look at 3 different types. One is looking into how to diversify within rice systems, so rice plus another crop, how to shift entirely the farming systems, for example, to aquaculture, versus going, for example, for non-rice, but perhaps cereal systems still in other places, because these are more fitting to the current conditions. So doing this kind of spatially targeted analytics really will become crucial for success. I will skip this slide, but importantly, as we start implementing the policies, I think right now with a lot of the rise in big data and satellite data, what we need is to really turn also the science into more operational systems that can help us monitor change and understand where we see change, why it's happening, how we can learn from that, and where we don't see change, understand why, and accelerate shifts that we want to see. So this is some work that we've done with the government of Uttar Pradesh on groundwater depletion, where farmers starting to grow rice in the summer season. And we wanted to understand and give some guidance on the extent of this and the magnitude of this issue, and where perhaps initial bans are needed. And also we supported them in identifying the districts where summer rice was banned in the last years. On the other hand, for example, in Eastern India, there's a lot of potential for increasing irrigation to increase yields, but again, there's a spatial structure to it. In some places, other factors will be limiting, and where you see, for example, the blue areas, other factors are not so important, and that's where really irrigation investments should focus. And similarly, for other more water-abundant, low-yielding regions globally, this type of approach can be quite useful to make sure that limited resources are invested properly. And of course, this needs to be combined with a more hydrological, eco-hydrological analysis of groundwater concerns, salinity concerns, to make sure that it's not only the yield response that we're focusing on, but also more integrated environmental safety is taken care of as well. So we've been using a lot of the hydrological data combined with the economic data here to identify the key investment zones. I will not spend a lot of time on this one, but again, the key point here is that especially nitrogen, where we are seeing a lot of investments in subsidies, and irrigation are very closely linked. And in some places where, for example, nitrogen is very limiting, changing the water equation will not have as much impact. So understanding where these co-limitations exist and how they play out for supporting changes is really crucial, not only for rice, but also for wheat, as you can see here. Next to those surveys that we're doing, another aspect that we need to, and we're starting to integrate more, and I will in the next slide see show what's possible with that, is using more remote sensing data to integrate current soil moisture information into modeling systems, that we can have a more real-time overview. And new developments in satellite data are making this possible. So we are having a global network to help develop more real-time soil moisture information together with the new, nicer satellites. Let me skip through these slides, but I just want to show that using the spatially integrated information, we can then also run scenarios and ask what-if questions. And for example, what we see in Eastern India is that there are $25 billion of fertilizer subsidies. In India, in only Eastern India, we can reduce that by 17% without affecting yields. And this type of systems can provide us more targeted information of how and where to do that, and thus save both on subsidies and also protect the environment. When we integrate this into more advanced modeling systems, we can become very spatially explicit. This is recent work on Haryana for this type of integrated crop and agrohydrological modeling. So if you're interested, please let me know, and we're happy to discuss more of these findings as well. The last topic that I want to go into is greenhouse gas emissions in rice. And what we are working on as well right now is to really integrate survey data, hydrological data, and agronomy data to understand what are practices, how do edaphic and climate conditions really affect emissions, and then build a system that can monitor this in real time to really help understand what's happening where and support decision makers and policymakers to do more quick and real-time decisions for allocating funds, for example, for reducing emissions. The last thing I'll say here is that, for example, in Eastern India, and that's important to understand for emission measurement in rice, is that not everywhere farmers are fully irrigating rice fields. And we've done some ex-ante analysis, and it shows that there's a lot of spatial and temporal variability. And what that means is that even like the baseline is not always even close to what the suggested practices are in terms of water management, where people often assume that continuous flooding is the case and you would reduce emissions by shifting to alternate wetting and drying in the middle. But what we see in those systems is actually it's the other way around. You would probably increase emissions, but also increase yields if you would move to such AWD practices. So really understanding what's happening on the ground is really crucial to guide transitions. And then the last thing I would say is these policy dialogues based on a lot of the spatial intelligence is really crucial. So here's a picture of a dialogue we had with the Nexus program in Northwest India, in Haryana, where we brought together people from irrigation department, agriculture department, university, to really discuss what's the evidence available, what of the evidence do we trust, how does that inform our programming and our investments going forward, and also our research programs. And I think this really has to be the cornerstone for making progress. And based on this, we are currently discussing how to improve the integrated water management plans and agriculture development plans in the state, which currently, especially with the fertilizer crisis, is a very high priority. Okay. Now the last thing I would say is for really making this happen, we need more integrated projects. So this is an example from South India, where we're working together with World Bank, local government, many universities globally to come up with more spatial analytics and integrated packages for supporting farmers, making sure they're financially compensated for any changes in practices that might take any risks, but also really developing the science through integrated modeling and field experiments and discussions with the stakeholders to inform their next investment programs. So in summary, the South Asia has really a big challenge ahead, I think, for managing the second green revolution, and the REFI nexus can really inform, as I was trying to show, how the groundwater depletion, nitrogen pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions are really interconnected. And we need to better understand the spatial structure of these to improve the management practices and sustainability outcomes through a more integrated analysis, but also through policy dialogues that help to generate the evidence that we need to support transitions towards more sustainable systems in the region. So with that, I thank you very much, and over to you, Ikra. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anthan, for that insightful presentation. I was taking the notes and your work on the special intelligence in green agriculture system, particularly around the fertilizer, water use, groundwater depletion in South Asia, and how to manage greenhouse gas emission, and how you can challenge it with policy dialogue, highlighted the important sustainability challenges and practical solution. Your discussion on yield cap and special targeting resource management show how evidence-based policy can improve both productivity and sustainability in South Asia. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Anthan. So I think we should move to the next presentation. So I hope Dr. Kosora Morabati with us. So before I hand it over to him, let me introduce Dr. Kosora Morabati to our larger audience. So he's the researcher at Shingon University, China. He focuses on the Mekong River Basin, particularly the coupled impacts of climate change, dam regulation, sand mining, on river floodplain dynamics and regional food security. Since 2018, he has conducted research on hydrological and hydrodynamic process across the Mekong system, with emphasis on Tonle Sap Lake Mekong Delta interaction, sediment transport, flood pulse alteration, fisheries, rice production, and resilience of water food system under climatic and human pressure. So he will talk about the dams, climate change, and food security in Mekong Basin. So, Dr. Moravati, the floor is yours.
Thank
I
you.
hope
Thank you for your introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you will have 12 to 15 minutes to complete.
Okay, I try my best to finish it.
Thank you so much.
So I think now you can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. As you can see from the title, I will focus on the Mekong side located in Southeast Asia, shared by 6 countries like China, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. So for today's presentation, my central message is very simple. The Mekong is not only a river channel and not only a source of hydropower. It is a food system. Dams and climate change affect food security not only by changing how much water is available, but by changing when water arrives, how sediment moves, and whether fish and floodplains remain connected. I will move from the river system to the pressures, to food security impact, and finally to practical pathways for management. Let's start with the basic chain connecting water, food, and energy. So when we talk about the Mekong, this transboundary river, we often separate water, food, and energy. But in reality, they are one connected system. A reservoir release, an irrigation abstraction, or a change in flood timing moves through a chain for the system. First, it changes seasonal flow, flood pulses, groundwater, and salinity. Then it affects food, fish migration, rice, irrigation, and sediment feeds soil fertility. Finally, it interacts with energy because hydropower, storage, peaking, and export all depends on the same river. So this is why food security cannot be assessed only from annual water volume. The timing, connectivity, and quality of the water are equally important. So this chain looks different in different parts of the basins. The Mekong Basin is highly connected, but its functions are not uniform across the basin. In the Lansang, located in China, the river is steep hydropower potential. You may know that we have the world's largest hydropower in this area. And the storage is concentrated. So the downstream tributary dams in countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos, we have a lot of hydropower dams in tributaries where the total storage is over 52 billion cubic meter. So irrigation system and floodplains become increasingly important in the lower part. For example, Tonle Sap Lake, located in Cambodia here, depends on seasonal reversal and floodplain inundation, while the data in Vietnam depends on freshwater flows, sediment, and salinity control. This means This means that a local decision, for example, several tributary dams or a canal system, a network of canal systems, can become a basin scale food issue. Flows, fish, and sediment across political borders. This is the key message, I think, for management of this basin. So here, the reason this matters, I think, is because of the seasonal rhythm of the river. Food security in the Mekong depends on three ecological processes. The first one is connectivity. Fish need routes along the river and between the river, tributaries, floodplain, lake, and the delta. The second is the flood pulse. It's a very important one because the lower area is located in tropical climate. The third is the sediment continuity. Sediment is not waste. It is a carrier of nutrients, which is very important for lands. So here you can see the sub-daily river flow fluctuations, which to some extent can define connectivity, what I refer to for connectivity. Sub-daily water level examples here are important for connectivity because daily data, first of all, can hide rapid change. These rapid fluctuations are central for fish to disrupt spawning and larva survival and create uncertainty for riverbank farming in local communities. Here you can see maybe in few hours in the Mekong, we have large river flow fluctuations, maybe 2 meters fluctuation in river. But this can only be captured by sub-daily data. And according to our analysis, only 30% of these fluctuations can be attributed to the dams. Other remaining part, all are because of the climate and heavy downpours in the basin. So the next question is, where do these alterations come from? A key result from our sub-basin work is that altered flow is regionally produced. As I said in the previous slide, climate variability and human activities do not act in the same way everywhere. Their direction and strength vary by season and by sub-basin. This is why a basin average can be misleading, specifically in the Mekong, and I think also we have the same situation in India. We need to separate the climate signal from human water use, locate the sub-basin that transmit pressure, and then identify the management levers. Importantly, for the Mekong, in some sub-basin, agricultural expansion and tributary dam can have stronger effects on mainstream flow. For example, here, some sub-basins shaped by Vietnam and Thailand or Vietnam by Cambodia. This shifts the discussion from blaming one actor to identifying where coordinated interventions are more effective. As I said in the previous slides, around 30 to 40% of large river flow fluctuations are attributed to dams. The others are attributed to what people are doing for water abstraction, for agriculture, and also small tributary dams. So climate change then shifts the basin on which this human pressure operates. So the Mekong is a monsoon system. So the difference between wet and dry season is central. Wet season flows move sediment, expand floodplain, and support the very important ecosystem at the lower part, like the delta and Tonle Sap Lake. Dry season flows determine irrigation reliability, a key point, salinity risk, reservoir release, and some fish spawning windows. So climate change makes these risks less predictable. Extreme years such as the severe drought, you may know about it, happened in 2016, 19, and 2020, act like stress tests. So they reveal where water allocation, irrigation schedule, and salinity management and ecological needs become brittle. So the practical implication is that planning against historical average is no longer enough for large river basins. The first place, when often we see these stresses, is the fishery. In the Mekong, fishery are one of the earliest warning systems for food security. The basins support extraordinary aquatic biodiversity with around more than 1,000 fish species and a very large annual fish harvest. But the risk is not only the total catch decline. The deeper risk is that migration routes, spawning queues, and floodplain nursery habitat are weakened. Existing dam infrastructures has already disconnected a large share of river and fish species, according to some papers, more than 50%. So subdaily fluctuation, which I mentioned already, are another layer. Fish larvae and juveniles can be affected by rapid change that daily data, as I said, may not capture. For communities, this becomes a direct food and livelihood issue. So agriculture is affected through a different but equally connected pathway. Agriculture faces a different form of dependence. As irrigated and agricultural land in the Mekong expands, the system becomes more dependent on reliable dry season surface water. Here, according to many references, in the near future, where agriculture is expanded by 65%, the surface water supports 95% of agricultural lands in this basin. So if the dry season flows are delayed or insufficient because of the dams, irrigation, salinity control, and crop calendars are affected together. If sediment is trapped, floodplains lose natural fertilizers and deltas lose land building materials. So the policy question is not how much water is stored, as I said before. It is who received the right water at the right time and with enough sediment and ecological function remaining. So this is why the dry season becomes the critical hotspot in these basins. Our future scenario results show why the dry season deserves special attention. Under SSP 5, we found that irrigation withdrawals related to available water is projected to reach about 90% annually by 2040. Maybe next 15 years, but about 59% during the dry season. So that seasonal contrast is the main message, I think, because the pressure is also spatial. Downstream subregion experienced larger reduction in water availability, as we highlighted here by different numbers, especially in the dry season, as I said. So this means that dry season reservoir operating rules, irrigation scheduling, and transboundary information sharing are high leverage interventions. Annual average can hide the period when competition is most intense in this basin. So at this point, water energy trades-off become food security trades-off in the Mekong system. Hydropower is not separate from agriculture, I think, but both depend on the timing of the water. In the water energy trades-off analysis, we found that hydropower prioritized operations can reduce downstream irrigation water availability by up to 14%, while the dry season impacts up to 5 times greater than the wet season. This is, I think, a critical message we found for the Mekong. Future irrigation demand is also projected to increase by around 63 to 68%, as I mentioned in this slide. So largely due to the irrigated area expansion. So the conflict is often a timing mismatch. Energy releases do not necessarily coincide with crop water demand, especially in, for example, in the Mekong in January and February. Future dry rainfall may then reduce average shortfalls, but it cannot replace coordinated operation. So what can change this story for the Mekong? The positive message is that dams cannot be part of the resilience if they are operated within a basin-wide food security framework. First, adaptive reservoir operation can better align release with fish spawning, flood pulse, and irrigation calendars. Second, environmental flows
should move beyond minimum flow and include seasonal flow and also sediment release. As I said, sediment is a critical element for soil fertility in all large river basins. So third, climate smart irrigation, if we use it, can reduce dry season withdrawal through scheduling, efficiency, and crop calendar. And the fourth, real-time data systems are essential not only for the dams, but also for water abstraction, sediment, salinity, and ecological monitoring. So the intervention here required three wider pathways, I think. Here, in one of our opinion paper published in Science, we developed three pathways to sustain the Mekong ecosystem integrity. We need three connected pathways. Institutional integrity means joint studies, shared operational data, emergency protocols, and harmonized flow targets. Knowledge integrity means credible monitoring, co-produced science, and integrated observation systems so that countries work for a common evidence base. Sustainable energy alternatives mean reducing over-dependence on hydropower, where other options, including solar system, wind, or other low-impact technologies, can help meet energy demand. Ecosystem integrity, therefore, is not an environmental add-on. It is the infrastructure that sustains water security, fishery, agriculture, and data stability. So I want to close with three decision messages for the Mekong, which I think this can be also applied to other international transboundary rivers. So first, energy first operation can undermine food security if dry season timing, sediment continuity, and fish connectivity are not threatened as operating objectives. Second, climate change makes coordination more valuable because future waters, especially heterogeneous, and often appear through upstream-downstream interactions. Third, data sharing is itself food security intervention. Transparent operations and common models can reduce blame, improve forecast, and enable adaptive releases. In short, the Mekong and other transboundary rivers should be managed as a food security system connecting hydropower, irrigation, fishery, and delta protection all together. This brings me to the final message. Dams are not automatically the problem, and they are not automatically the solution. They can be part of the resilience only if we operated within a basin framework that protects flow timing, sediment, fish, and dry season agriculture. This is the shift I want to emphasize from energy-first dams to food secure river basin. Yeah, thank you. That was my presentation, and looking forward for a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Kosorovo, for the excellent presentation. Again, I was taking the points, and your presentation clearly showed that Mekong is not only a river, but a complete food system where irrigation, fisheries, food security all depend on water timing, sediment flows, seasonal rhythms. And your discussion highlight how hydropower operation, dry season, irrigation demand, climate viability creates important water, energy, food trade-off across the basin. Rightly said, it's become the food security trade-off analysis. So the point that the RAPE policy question is not only how much water is stored in the dam, but who gets the right water at the right time was especially powerful. Your insights on the coordinate basin-wide management, climate change, shifting the baseline added a very important perspective in today's discussion. Thank you for sharing the valuable insight. With this, I would now like to invite our discussant, Dr. Bunyad Halmat, to kindly share his reflection and remarks. And a brief introduction about him. He's a research group leader at International Water Management Institute in Sri Lanka, focusing on water, food, energy nexus. He specialized in operationalizing the nexus approach to create sustainable on-the-ground solution in developing countries. And I also have a pleasure of working within his research group. So Dr. Bunyat, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Ikra, I really appreciate coming in today to reflect on what we heard. And thank you very much for both of the presenters for these very rich presentations. And I'm actually struggling to synthesize these very rich presentations because both of them were not just from different geographies, different scales, and they showed a lot of interconnected challenges. So let me, first of all, maybe take us back to why we, first of all, promote the water, energy, food nexus approach. I think that's because we want to minimize trade-offs, right, and utilize when we have synergies to achieve systems efficiency. And when we do that, we have a collaboration, better data, policy alignment, and those are, I think, some of the suggestions that came out in today's presentations. You know, that we need to improve data, we need to align policies, and we need to achieve cross-sectoral collaboration. And although both of these presentations were from two very distinct regions, I would have to say that they're the same, that the two sides of the same coin. And let me just first start from South Asia presentation by Dr. Anton. There, I think the issue is kind of invisible. It's bottom up, a lot of things, right? So we talked about the greenhouse gas emissions, the falling groundwater levels, etc. While in the case of the Mekong River, we saw a very visible problem that's linked to infrastructure and its operations, right? So it's like more top down, and while they're both different places, but the problem is that you know, there is a policy misalignment. We're still thinking in silos, and I would have to say that in case of Dr. Khosrow's presentation, the Mekong, on top of the nexus challenges, we also have this problem of transboundary context that adds another layer of complexity. So especially when we're talking in case of Mekong, we heard that, you know, we can have these tools, but then there's also the natural variability because of the climate change, which actually accounts for a larger share of the variability from, I think, I got the numbers of like 60 to 70%. So while we have infrastructure and the operations that are creating the water, energy, food nexus challenges in the Mekong, it's also the natural variability that's creating the contributing to the problem. So what's happening in both cases, I think, is the sectors, the institutions, the organization, ministries, they're not talking to each other. And that's basically, we cannot allow that in this interconnected and unpredictable world, because the price that's being paid, I think in both cases, is the vulnerable and the marginalized groups pay the most price. For example, when we heard by Dr. Anton in South Asia, when we're creating emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, they come back by basically impacting us through accelerating climate change, right? And that again drives the problem of people wanting to have their food security, water security in a more unpredictable world. But we also heard that soil salinity and dropping groundwater levels actually lead to reduced yields that would impact the farmers and the people who are already vulnerable by impacting their incomes, for example. And in case of the Mekong River, we also heard that these declining fish catches and declining productivity already has an impact on how much fish can be caught, for example, or how much rice can be caught by reducing the nutrients in sediments that otherwise would be released. But in the future, we also heard that these impacts on fish migration can even increase because because of the timings of releases, how they impact the fish migration, right? And then we also heard the solutions, how these that utilized a different blend of cross-sectoral kind of collaboration from institutions to markets and models, how we can utilize these the different blend to basically address these nexus challenges. So in South Asia, for example, this is by protecting resource, right? We also heard about policy dialogues, capacity strengthening, reducing footprint, so finding crops that actually have a lower natural resource footprint. We also heard about utilizing tools, models to better predict where we can reduce, for example, input of these fertilizers, or where we can actually achieve some of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And one thing that really surprised me, and if you have 2 minutes, maybe after this, Dr. Anton, I would be interested in hearing more about why these alternative wetting and drying interventions would actually lead to greater emissions, because a lot of times we have this perception that they actually reduce the emissions. There were even not just by reducing the water table, but also by linking and reducing the operational time of pumps to pump water, that also put up the greenhouse gases, because they run on diesel most of the time, right? Especially in the Southeast Asia. And in the case of the Mekong, we heard that it's not just anticipating nature. So this is where we heard about the models and tools, right? The climate scenarios, but it's also managing infrastructure. I would love to hear from Dr. Khosrow about how do you take these decisions that you, the decision messages that you set in a transboundary context like Mekong, right? Because there we need to make sure that we're not just achieving cross-sectoral cooperation, but this cooperation needs to happen between countries, because the downstream countries probably would have difficulty dictating to the upstream countries, or you need to improve these releases. So the diplomacy has to play a role here, right? And it's also considering all different power dynamics. How do you take that? Like if you have maybe 1 or 2 minutes to come back on that. But what I really liked is that urgent message that the crisis is not something that we're anticipating. Yes, we're anticipating that it's going to get worse, but it's happening now is what we heard. And we need to act now. So I had more questions to ask to the presenters, but I'm looking at the time, and I would appreciate having more time for the audience to ask their questions. So thank you very much again, and over to you, Iqra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baniat, for your thoughtful reflection, and your comments helped to connect both presentation and highlighted the broader policy implementation on water, food, energy nexus, and sustainable agriculture across the Asia. And now we can move to the question answer session. And I was going through that question answer list, and most of the question that was raised from the Dr. Anthus presentation have already been addressed by himself. So there is a 1 or 2 question people left it in the chat box for the Dr. Kosar Morobetif. So there is so Dr. Kosar, there is a one question that Emini was asking, that can we have information on transboundary area measurement, in the sense that since the area is shared between different countries with different policies and measurement strategies, how the evaluation can be addressed, since a country can measure with respect to the economical condition while the other cannot. So Dr. Kosar, this question is from, would you like to address this question?
If I understand your question clearly, you are talking about how information can be shared or improve the how to say, the working together in transboundary rivers when we have high conflicts, right? I think it was.
They were asking about how to measure the transboundary area.
How to what?
How to measure the transboundary area.
Mayor, or I cannot get your point. The second word, I don't know actually. How to manage or
How to calculate the transport boundary area?
calculate the transboundary area.
Yeah.
The transboundary is a treaty between different nations, so I think it is not something difficult, or to determine where the borders between the countries is located. I know that we have a huge conflict between the countries, because specifically at the borders, where it belongs to one country, where it belongs to the other one. I think when we address the transboundary issue, this is not something very important, given that we have more large challenges, like uncoordinated reservoir construction, irrigation expansion, agricultural expansion, and also sand mining in the basins. That's my idea for this comment, if I got it correctly, actually.
Yeah, in a way it is correct. But again, the question was that because different countries have a different policies and calculation strategies, so how we can evaluate that strategy?
The strategy for transboundary rivers, right?
Yeah, to calculate.
Yeah, so of course, countries have national priorities, but just give you an example for Mekong, which is shared by 6 countries. In the Mekong, countries have started already to have joint studies, specifically with China, because in the lower part we have Mekong River Commission. So something can change the national priorities if they have a clear understanding of the situation, what is going on in each country. Joint studies, I think, help to trust each other, and we can know how and what is going on in each countries by field visits. Sometimes we do not have any good or clear understanding about the downstream countries, and we simply judge them. For joint studies, we experienced this, and we found that it can help us to promote or to transfer the real challenge to the policymakers, and they can revise their decision for better management of the rivers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morawati. I think it explained very well. I think we are running out of the time. We have only left 4 minutes. So anything Dr. Bunyad and Anton wants to add or say something, and we can formally conclude this session.
Yeah, maybe if I can just respond to Bunyad's one point on increasing emissions from AWD. It's of course a little bit of a cheeky way to present it, but the whole point is that a lot of the estimations of greenhouse gas emissions and the assumptions around water management and rice is that rice globally is always flooded at the entire season. And if anyone who's been to different irrigation systems, who's from irrigation engineering side or irrigation management side, is probably quite aware that that's a very difficult thing to do. Not every farmer's field can easily always have access to irrigation whenever that's kind of wanted. So in many places we actually deal with situations where either because of high diesel prices or because of canal management challenges, there's a under irrigation basically happening, right? The issue is we don't really know where and to what extent and what that means for emissions. And so what we're doing now is to develop this kind of global rice water monitoring product together with the NASA satellites and some ground truthing data. And what I showed was like our initial estimate from merging soil moisture data with the ORISA crop modeling to estimate the emissions. What is the magnitude of under irrigation and what are the effects on emissions in Bihar? And basically what it shows is that farmers in not every year in every place, but across most years in many places are actually under irrigating quite severely. There's a lot of dry spells even in the monsoon season. And so if you go to like AWD is water saving compared to continuous flooding, but not compared to like deficit irrigation, right? So basically it's just that the actual baseline in farmer fields is actually different. And that's why if you talk about low emission rice, it means you need to make sure that when you start doing basically more good service delivery or better access to irrigation, that you ensure that that doesn't over increase your abstraction or over increase your emissions, but that you keep them low. That's the challenge in those ecologies, in those geographies. It's not to stop the flooding because there's actually currently no flooding. The problem is farmers don't have enough water. Yeah, so that's the story behind this. And we're trying to map out what's the actual situation globally in different rice regions. Many people who have field experience will know, but we don't really have a global good product that can tell us that. So yeah, I hope that helps to answer and explain. The same emissions from diesel and energy consumption will also increase if you irrigate more, right? So, but you should still keep it as low as possible. Yeah, that's the background. So thanks, and back over to you, Ikram.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anthan, for explaining it in a very well manner. So I think as we come to the end of today's webinar, and I would like to sincerely thank you again, Dr. Anthan and Dr. Kosorova for the excellent presentation, and Dr. Bunyad for his valuable discussion and reflection on fertilizer and greenhouse gas emission. So I would also like to thank all participants for joining us and for your active engagement throughout the session. So with that, I will thank you once again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day ahead. See you around, Dr. Bunyad, Dr. Anthan. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ikra.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.